Mat Samaroon. So that was hi or welcome in the Dothraki language. So you know what this video is about today. The Dothraki language or Lech Dothraki. Let's begin. Hey everyone, welcome to Care Fiction. I'm your host Shankar and today we are going to explore the Dothraki language from Game of Thrones. Everyone's favorite fantasy TV series or not. Not going to dwell on that. Lately, I have been reading this book called The Art of Language Invention by David J. Peterson. So he's the man behind the Dothraki language and many other fictional languages. So that is how I got the idea for a video series on fictional languages, and hence I'm here starting with the Dothraki. So I have been learning linguistics for some time and I have to say it's an enchanting field. So when I looked into how the fictional languages are created and so on, I was totally wonderstruck. And so I thought of giving you a flavor of that. Although fair warning, I'm still an amateur when it comes to linguistics. Before we begin, let me be clear on some points. Firstly, this video might be a little esoteric or technical, but don't fret. I will simplify it as much as possible. And secondly, this is not a video where I will teach you to learn Dothraki because I'm still learning too as well. But we will look into a few words for references. For ease of understanding, I am focusing on two broad aspects, namely the culture or the background of the Dothraki people, which also includes their real life inspirations, and also the language creation process as a whole. Sounds good? Well then, why wait? Before we begin, I forgot to mention that Dothraki falls under what is known as constructed language or Conlang for short. Then there are the natural languages like Spanish, English, etc. Both Conlangs and natural languages are real languages because they actually exist. Let us look into the culture of the Dothraki people. But before that, there is a subfield of linguistics called anthropological linguistics, which defines language as a function of society and culture and vice versa. So let's say how a particular ethnic group or a community or a tribe uses language in a manner of structure and meaning. And speaking of the culture of Dothraki, George R. Martin mentioned that the Dothraki are partially based on the Huns and the Mongols, and to some extent the steppe tribes like the Alvars and the Magyars. Additionally, he also added a few elements of the indigenous tribes of the Americas and fantasy elements for the rest. But among them, the Mongols share a good deal of similarity with the horse lords. The Dothraki, who are dark-haired, copper-skinned riders organized in khalasars, each with a khal at their head, are basically nomads. We can go on and on recounting and tracing the Dothraki culture, but this is a video about the Dothraki language. So let's get into the best part, and we are going to start with an interesting bit. HBO hired the Language Creation Society to create the language, and after an application process involving over 30 Conlangers, Peterson was chosen to develop the Dothraki language. So when he was finally hired to create the Dothraki language for Game of Thrones, the showrunners David Benioff and Daniel Weiss wanted two specific things from him. Firstly, they wanted him to incorporate all the words that G.R.R. Martin had created for his books, and secondly, they wanted the Dothraki language to sound harsh. David Peterson used a two-pronged approach for the creation process, taking into account two major factors. First, the topography of the area. This helps to assume what these people do and don't have words for, and what their lifestyle is like. And this invokes queries like, what are their lives supposed to be like? Who do they interact with on a regular basis? And how do these interactions shape their own culture? The second factor is their level of technology. The world of Game of Thrones is at a significantly lower level of technology than the modern world, and the Dothraki are even lower than that. They are also insular and they don't let their interactions with other people influence their lifestyle. So they have words for their own lifestyle and may even borrow some few words as well. For example, the Dothraki word for book is borrowed from Valyrian. So as mentioned before, Peterson did not create the language from scratch, but started with a set of words from the first 3 books of A Song of Ice and Fire. This is the list. So there is a total of 56 words, and of which 24 are proper names. So now comes the question how the Dothraki would sound like. Well, the answer is it was left to the fans to determine the pronunciation. And assuming that the bulk of the fans would be English speakers, so Peterson decided to go like how an American English speaker would pronounce. For instance, we say khaleesi, but for a native Dothraki speaker, it would sound something like khaleesi. For this next section, we are going a tad technical, but it's only a couple of concepts, so bear with me. A vital branch in linguistics is phonetics, and I think you may have heard about it. This studies how humans make and perceive sounds, or in the case of sign languages, the equivalent aspects of sign. Phonetics is primarily concerned with 2 chief aspects: place of articulation and manner of articulation. Place of articulation, as you might have guessed, has to do with from which the speech organs are the sounds produced. Here is a visual representation. From this cross-section of an image, we can see that there are various speech organs from which sounds are produced. So firstly, there is the alveolar ridge, and the sounds are known as the alveolars. Then similarly, there is the lips, labials, teeth for dentals, nasal cavity, glottis for glottals, and so on. And then there is the manner of articulation, which is the configuration and interaction of those speech organs in the form of like strictures. So here is a chart for explanation. We are not quite done yet, but I promise this is the last. So when it comes to speech sounds, there are consonants and vowels. Simply putting, consonants are sounds that put some sort of obstruction in the way of airflow, thereby producing a different sound than the original. And thus, here the manner of articulation comes into play. While vowels, like we have in English like A, E, I, O, U, is a sound produced when air is allowed to pass out of the lungs unimpeded. Coming to Dothraki, thus Peterson came up with this phonetic inventory. This is a standard IPA representation where IPA stands for International Phonetic Alphabet. It will take some time to getting used to these sounds and used to this chart. So this was the first step to creating the speech system. The next step was creating words from existing words from the books. This is how he did it. The C's and V's stands for consonants and vowel sounds, as we discussed earlier. For example, in khal, kha is a consonant sound, a is a vowel sound, and then it ends with a consonant sound. Same with the rest. You might recall when I said that Dothraki word for book is derived from Valyrian. The High Valyrian word for book is temver, hope I'm pronouncing it right, while the Dothraki word for the book is timver. Similarly, there is no exact equivalent to throne in Dothraki, though the word azor, which means chair in Dothraki, is sparingly used for throne. But however, they do say throne to mean throne, and thus it is a direct loan word. Moreover, the Dothraki live on the central plains of the continent and fear the ocean, or are not quite familiar with the ocean. So, because they don't sail on ships and rarely even see them, they don't exactly have a word for boat. They in fact say Zrazef Ido, which means wooden horses, to mean boat. Fun fact, Dothraki have around 12 ways to mean horse. Well, that is because their way of life is centered around riding horses. Just as the Inuit have dozens of different words to mean snow. This way of meaning things like wooden horses or Raziv Ido is called kennings, which are short metaphorical phrases to communicate unfamiliar concepts. Like the Dothraki calls the sea poison water and the Westerosi men in iron suits. So that is all about the Dothraki language that could be condensed without getting too technical. Thus, David Peterson created around 1700 words for the Dothraki vocabulary. I hope that I could enlighten you a little about the Dothraki language. To keep the discussion further going and for anything you have to say, please comment. Remember to drop a like and make sure to hit that subscribe button. San Atsumari Yaran. Thank you for watching this video and see you soon.